Hello and welcome to Gone Plant-Based. And my name is Nella D and I'm on a plant-based, a whole food plant-based, no added oil, no processed sugar diet. And it's doing me the power of good. And so far to date, I've lost over 41 pounds. I'm desperately trying to get to the 42-pound mark because in old money, where I come from in England, we use stones and pounds, and that would mean 42 pounds would be 3 stone. But that doesn't take away from the 41 pounds I'm delighted to have lost so far. So the journey continues. But what I would like to talk to you about today is something that I think is, well, for me, it's important. You see, I'm one of those awkward people that has a lot of food intolerances, drug intolerances. For example, I can't have penicillin like a lot of people, and an awful lot of drugs I react to. So it's going to be great if I can get healthier and be dependent on less drugs, because then that's not going to be an issue at all. But in terms of food, I'm pretty intolerant. Well, I have celiac disease, so there's the gluten aspect. I'm intolerant of dairy, and that seems to be something that runs in my family a bit. My son is even worse than I am. He suffers worse than I am, but I certainly know I can get away with a bit of it. And when it's an added ingredient in something, so long as it's not like full cream or something, if it's just part of the ingredients, then I can usually get away with it so long as I haven't had much of it. But nevertheless, even if you can get away with it, it can't be doing you any good if it's something your body will at some point reject. It doesn't like it. Now, there's lots of other things, and I'm not going to bore you with all the things I'm tolerant of and intolerant of, but I want to talk to you today about nuts. Now, I love nuts, and nuts are great, aren't they? Some people find they stall their weight loss. So far, that hasn't happened to me. And if it does happen to me, then obviously I'll have to rethink. But they're a great source of omega-3s, vitamins, minerals, and natural fats, the natural oils that are within them. So they're very helpful to the diet and very natural to the diet. I suppose if we go back to the old hunter-gatherer conundrum, I expect they ate a lot of nuts. Well, the thing about nuts, though, is some years ago, I used to treat myself to a packet of fruit and nuts. So it was mixed nuts and raisins and sultanas and banana chips and stuff like that. And I used to have this little portion every day. And after a few days, I started to get stomach pains. And I didn't know what it was, but they were real griping stomach pains, you know the type. And I didn't make the connection with the nuts for quite a few days because I just thought it was a one-off and perhaps I'd picked up something, I don't know. But anyway, so I carried on. And sure enough, after a few days, I realized these pains started a little while after I'd eaten the fruit and nuts. So I decided, well, I'm going to have to experiment here. There's obviously something that's not agreeing. So I decided to just try the nuts. And yes, it was the nuts. So I thought, oh no, another thing I'm intolerant of. I'm a very intolerant person, obviously. Anyway, I completely stopped nuts. And then at Christmas, I'd perhaps have a few peanuts. And if I had too many peanuts, I'd get away with it. Now, they're legumes, actually, but it's still something within the nut. Anyway, I looked into it. I couldn't find it. And I just assumed I'm just intolerant of nuts. And this went on for years until I read a fascinating article. And on all nuts and seeds and a lot of legumes, there are enzymes. In the natural state, they are coated with enzymes. One of them is called phytic acid. And phytic acid is very helpful. In fact, we probably wouldn't have the harvest that we have without it, because what it does is it creates a bitter taste. And have you had that? If you had a walnut and thought, it's a bit bitter. I like it, but it's a bit bitter. But I'm going to eat it because it's good for me, but it's bitter. It's the phytic acid. And all these nuts and seeds and legumes in nature have these enzymes. But phytic acid is great because what it actually does is it protects the seeds and nuts. And what happens is, your little bugs, they come along and they want to nibble in and eat all the food. But it's toxic to them. So they probably scurry away and think, yuck, disgusting, I'm not going to eat that. Or, I don't know, maybe it kills them. I don't know, actually, if it kills them or not, but I hope not. But anyway, let's hope it just frightens them off because they don't like the taste. So, yeah, it's there and it protects the seeds from pests and diseases. And if you don't get rid of that, then it causes digestive problems. Now, obviously, some people who are more tolerant of foods than someone like me, it might take longer. It might not be so noticeable. But there is a way you can deal with it because I don't have dairy in a plant-based diet. I have plant milk. So we make a lot of almond milk. I love almond milk. Sometimes we make walnut milk. We used to make oat milk, but oat milk's another one that I've gone a bit funny with. So we'll forget that. It does, although it doesn't have gluten, it has another protein in it that is similar to gluten. It's called avenin. And some people who are celiac respond to oats in the same way. So that started to happen, unfortunately. But when it comes to plant-based milks, we often make almond milk. And the way round this is to soak your nuts and seeds. Now, seeds won't take so long. But what we do is overnight, we put, say, half a cup of raw almonds into a big jug. We fill it with cold water, and then in the morning we rinse them, put them in the blender, put in a litre of water, blend it, strain it. We've got almond milk, or it could be walnut milk. What actually happens is it gets rid of the phytic acid just by soaking it. And it's the same with all of your nuts. So if you're using a lot of nuts in cooking and you don't want anyone to get an upset stomach or to absorb or have to try and digest this enzyme that is toxic to insects and certain diseases and viruses and things in the soil, then you can soak them. And I do that now with all nuts and seeds. Seeds I don't soak for long, maybe half an hour. You can soak them overnight. But certainly when it comes to making creams, non-dairy creams and milks, etc., the plant-based milks all have the nuts, if they're nut milks, soaked the night before. So they get a good 8 to 10 hours of soaking before it's made into milk. But one of the nice things about that it does, that overnight, even though you're going to get rid of the phytic acid, which is good, is it plumps them up. So the milk is actually creamier and smoother, which is really nice. So it's worth doing. Now, if you've got one of those super duper powerful blenders like a Vitamix or a Blendtec, you'll often see recipes where it will actually say no need to soak the nuts because these blenders are so powerful. They will make good plant milk with raw nuts. But you haven't got rid of the phytic acid, have you? So it's well worth, and you don't get the creaminess as much, but it's well worth soaking your nuts. Get rid of that phytic acid. We don't need it. It's there to repel. It's there as a toxicity. It's there to protect the nut and the seed to survive, but we can just wash it off. Now, another way and this is something perhaps you can make a comment on if you know about it, is quite often I'll roast walnuts before I use them in a recipe. So if you're making plant-based burgers and you're going to chop up some walnut, because it has a kind of meaty texture, so it's quite nice, especially when you're transitioning to plant-based from being a meat eater, I'll toast them, and that seems to get rid of the bitterness as well. So I'd be interested if anyone out there does know if actually toasting the nuts gets rid of the phytic acid as well, if heat can destroy the phytic acid, because I do find they're not as bitter once they've been toasted. Or is it just simply the nice toasty flavour covers it? You know, it disguises it, it masks it. I don't know. But that's one thing I've learned. And whether you have tolerances or intolerances, you probably want to get rid of that phytic acid. It's not meant for us to be digested. So even though you may not react, soak your nuts, soak your seeds, and enjoy. And thank you very much for joining me here today on Gone Plant-Based. I'm building up the channel. I'd love you to hit subscribe and the little bell that, means you'll get notifications. So bit by bit, the channel's going to grow, and I hope there's lots we can share, lots planned for the future. But for now, soak your nuts.